In 1974, over 2,000 members of UAW Local 510 began an epic strike against United Aircraft in Montreal. The demands were basic: union security, COLA, bringing wages and benefits up to industry standards, and getting rid of a humiliating merit pay system.
They were hard, they were arrogant, they were... you could talk to them, but they would listen to you, but they wouldn't change their ways or do anything.
United Aircraft vowed they would never agree to a dues checkoff. The company immediately applied for an injunction and got one that limited picketers to 3 per gate. In February, the company presented an insulting offer. They sent letters to the striking workers, threatened to move jobs, and claimed that membership was not behind the strike.
They had foremen visiting people at home, and letters to the membership over the head of the union, which is all things that are sort of not encouraged by the law.
The union called their bluff and put the company offer to a vote. Quebec director Bob Dean had the ballots counted by the press. A creative move that generated lots of sympathetic coverage when the offer was soundly rejected by a vote of 1,346 to 346. In March, the company started using scabs, and the police were quick to treat picketers roughly as they escorted them into the plant. Canadian Director Dennis McDermott addressed the strikers.
Starting today, this is no longer the strike of Local 510, UAW against United Aircraft. From this day forward, this is a strike between United Aircraft and the entire UAW all the way through Canada.
The leader of the opposition Parti Québécois, René Lévesque, gave a strong message of solidarity.
Il faut toujours essayer de se rentrer dans la tête, et il n'est pas mauvais qu'on se le fasse rappeler. C'est que la seule véritable force que vous ayez, c'est votre solidarité. Vous êtes sortis ensemble, votre dignité demande que vous rentriez ensemble. Autrement.
The Quebec labor movement rallied, and a demonstration of 8,000 workers was held in support of the strikers. 4 months into the strike, McDermott appealed to the UAW Canadian Council to pour money into Montreal, and locals across the country responded. Wives and families of the strikers played a leading role in organizing support activities. Among the icons of this battle were the crosses and fleur-de-lis constructed by strikers from Horseshoe Nails and sold to raise money. Thousands were sold across North America.
2 tool makers, part of the strikers, who had that idea. And at the end, they had 20 people working. They were paying them salaries with the strikers who were making these nails. I think we were selling them for $3 because it was from one end of Canada to the other, from our own local unions, from the American UAW. And the American UAW had more than 1 million members at that time. Joan Fonda came to Montreal and made one beautiful portrait of the United Aircraft, this big American corporation that thinks it can run down everyone. She made a beautiful public appearance, and she was honored with a cross too.
The company continued its aggressive tactics.
They had foremen visiting people at home.
United Aircraft hired a strike-breaking security outfit.
They had dogs.
They paid $7 an hour for dogs, double the workers' wages. As the use of scabs expanded, frustrated workers blocked the plant gates. They were hit with police violence and arrests. The courts also backed United Aircraft's attacks on the union to the hilt. Local 510 was fined $20,000 and a new injunction was issued that reduced the number of pickets allowed per gate from 3 to 0. In May 1974, the company sued the union for $5.4 million. The opposition Parti Québécois introduced a bill into the Quebec legislature.
When the strike started, one of their guys presented a private member's bill to legislate the RAND formula. Robert Burns, who was a former CNTU representative, Bourassa and his labor minister, Jean Cornouaille, had déjà said, oh yes, we'll legislate for the brand formula. They forgot about it.
A major crisis threatened the strike in August of 1974. Émile Maisy, the Secretary-Treasurer of the International Union, sent a letter to all Canadian locals and to every member of Local 510, alleging that some people had improperly cashed checks for strike pay. Maisy's letter was especially damaging because it jeopardized financial support from other locals and undermined efforts to keep strikers on the picket line when several hundred had already returned to work.
Being sort of sabotaged after 6 months of strike by our own headquarters. Dennis was a fighting Irishman. He surely went back to Detroit and did some Irish fighting.
Quebec workers were astonished that Dennis championed them so vigorously. McDermott confronted this head-on. The next meeting of the UAW Canadian Council passed a toughly worded 4-page motion of censure against Maisy.
Actions and asked the following personal question. Fraud allegations are not proven by any process or trial. Why was it necessary to publicize suspected improprieties instead of using the internal union process? It's clear that Maisy must have just gone off his rocker.
In the fall, the Quebec government appointed a new special mediator, Pierre Dufresne. Dufresne's report in October concluded that the company and union had irreconcilable differences. But neither he nor the government made any recommendations to resolve the dispute. United Aircraft threatened to move workers out of Quebec, and frustrated workers demonstrated and burnt scabs cars. On October 29, there was a solidarity march of 40,000 Quebec workers, but still the strike dragged on. A parliamentary commission, and Jean Cornouaille, the provincial labour minister, failed to make any progress. In December, Cornouaille said the United Aircraft was Quebec's Vietnam. In January 1975, the Canadian UAW Council passed a resolution calling for the nationalization of United Aircraft. In February, a Quebec judge sentenced 5 strikers to prison. In March, it was revealed that the Canadian federal government had been giving United Aircraft $1 million a month during the strike, and that federal government employment centres had been supplying scabs. The Quebec Liberal government then suggested they would pass the PQ Private Members Bill, mandating the RAND formula. Based on this, the union took that demand off the bargaining table, but the company still refused to come to an agreement. Eventually, agreement was reached on all points except one, the return to work of the strikers. The Quebec government carried out a registration of workers still on strike and found there were 1,005, of whom 976 wanted to return. United Aircraft said they would take back only 60. The company's next offer was to re-employ 250 strikers of their choice over a 12-week period. This is what led to the dramatic action on May 12, 1975. A group of 34 strikers staged an occupation of the factory and demanded negotiations. A reporter went in with them. What happened next shocked the province. United Aircraft management demanded that the police clear the factory. Heavily armed cops marched in, brutally beat the strikers inside, and then arrested them all. As they brought their victims outside, 2 cops flanked each one, holding them up by their belts so that it would seem they could walk on their own. The Quebec Federation of Labour led a one-day strike of 100,000 workers across Quebec. It was the biggest sympathy strike in North America of the past 50 years. The occupation was the turning point of the strike.
Sure, that did wake up, and that led to that citizens committee. And eventually, it took a couple of months or so, but eventually led to a settlement.
In June, Labour Minister Cornouaille presented new recommendations that were accepted by the striking workers, but still rejected by the company. Finally, in August, Premier Bourassa brokered a deal, and a contract was signed. The agreement did not include a dues checkoff. That was left for provincial legislation. There was a schedule for a return to work that stretched over several weeks. The jobs of the 34 Charlies arrested during the occupation were subject to arbitration.
The militant workers said, no way, we won't go back without the 34. But the 34 held a meeting among themselves, and then they informed us that they had decided that they wanted to save the union, they wanted the workers to go back to work.
Local 510 voted to increase union dues to provide support for the 34, but they never got their jobs back. However, the heroism and determination of the United Aircraft strikers ensured that Local 510 survived. The strike also led to profound political changes that were unforeseen at the beginning. The attacks on the United Aircraft workers and the inadequate response of the government became issues in the next provincial election. On November 15, 1976, the Parti Québécois swept to power and René Lévesque became premier. Bourassa's Liberals were reduced from 102 to 26 seats in the 110-seat legislature. The following year, the PQ enacted the most progressive labor legislation in North America, including these key provisions. The use of scabs is forbidden during a legal strike. All strikers have a right to return to their jobs before anyone else. Union contracts must include dues checkoff, the RAND formula, as a minimum. These laws are still on the books in Quebec, thanks in large part to the United Aircraft strikers. It is little wonder that the 34 Charlies are still recognized as heroes by the labor movement in Quebec. In 2005, they were honored at the celebration of the 30th anniversary of their epic battle.